think I speak for many students when I say that we're very, very concerned that two innocent people may have possibly just had their lives ruined.
Lord, your first concern is that somebody's falsely accused?
Don't tell me what my first concern is.
I was disturbed to see how people were saying, why aren't they coming forward? Why aren't they saying what happened? Why haven't they spoken out against other players? But no one said, wait, hold on a moment. What if they're innocent? What if they didn't do anything wrong?
And we are out of time, but I will say that these things don't happen in a vacuum. I understand your point, but it's also freedom of speech. People have a right, just like you're expressing your opinion.
They do, but it was prosecuted as a witch hunt from the beginning. People presumed their guilt, and in America, we don't do that.
Well, let's put it this way. The only person in this whole case that has any real significant evidence of wrongdoing against them is one district attorney by the name of Mike Nifong.
Well, that's the truly depressing thing about this, is you could have had a situation where they might have said, all right, look, we rushed to judgment, we thought something happened, it looks like absolutely nothing happened now, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have done it. But instead, they're standing by their original statement, which speaks to the fact that for them, this was never about what happened to this particular woman according to her testimony, nor was it ever about these players. It was always for them about their political agenda. And I'll say this, the one person, again, who without question has behaved in an unethical, immoral, and sinister fashion is District Attorney Mike Nifong. He's pursued a case not because of the evidence, but in spite of the evidence. And the idea that in America you would pursue a case against 3 people when the evidence suggests not that they did it, but that they didn't do it, to me is beyond unconscionable.
You're not willing to say she's lying just yet, but I want to go to a man that I think might disagree with that. Stephen Miller, Executive Director of the Duke Conservative Union. You have been outspoken on this case from the start. Do you still give her the benefit of the doubt? I don't think you ever did you?
Well, I never gave her the benefit of the doubt. If you looked at the evidence in its totality, it was clear from very early on in this case that this was indeed a bogus case. And Jane, I think both you and I can agree that all the charges should be dropped. This is absolutely unbelievable. On the night in question, just that night alone, she had several different versions of events. In one version of events that night, she claimed she was only groped and not even raped. She changed the number of attackers. In the photo lineup, she identified different people. She identified one of the people as having a mustache who didn't even have a mustache. This whole case has been wrought with irregularities and nonsense and deceptions. Mike Nifong keeping exculpatory evidence away from the defense. You're talking about a guy that did 70 press interviews, used it to get reelected. There was never any real evidence against these players. The DNA didn't match on any count in any way, in any capacity this entire time. You have absolutely no reason to believe these players committed this crime. One of the players has a solid alibi during the time the crime was supposed to have occurred. You've got all of this stuff. I cannot think of one case of equivalent or near profile in the United States of America where there's been so little reason for 3 people or one person or anybody to be brought to trial. This is insanity.
I know you think they should never have been filed, but given that report, should they have been dropped back in May?
They should have been dropped. And let me add this thought. If this had not been a situation where you had 3 apparently well-to-do white lacrosse players accused of raping a poor black stripper single mother in Durham, if you hadn't had that racial element, there's no way this case could have continued for that long. But because of the incredibly toxic racial environment you have in America, and specifically in Durham, where 96% is estimated of the black population voted for Nifong's re-election, you have a situation where people are afraid to intervene because they'll be perceived as doing it for the wrong motivations. And the only thing that matters here is justice.
And I want to go to Stephen Miller of the Conservative Union for the big picture here, because you could argue that if she's making this up, you know, people have a tendency to want to get even when racial slurs are uttered at them, and that the ugliness began with those slurs. Your thoughts on that? Because I know you're saying that that does not fairly represent Duke, and I certainly agree, but this ugliness came from somewhere. It did happen. Those slurs were uttered.
Well, it doesn't fairly represent Duke. It also doesn't fairly represent the lacrosse team because, first of all, we're talking about a few individuals that are alleged to have said these things. But the 3 players that are on, that have been indicted, that are about to face trial, are not the ones that are supposed to have said these things. The majority of the players on the team, no one's accused them of saying anything racist. So you can't take a brush and paint the whole team because of what a few people said, which is heinous, but doesn't reflect on the team as a whole. That would be absolutely absurd.
And I'm not doing that, but what I'm saying is that we talk about this horrible situation and this racially polarizing situation, and it stemmed from those words. And people say, oh, words are meaningless, but words count. Words count a lot, and they can create a lot of tragedy.
Words do count a lot, and there's no question. Let me tell you something. If somebody said to a black person or an Asian person or a Jewish person or any person, something like that, and I was around, I would put them in their place, because there's no place for that in America. But that cannot be the justification for a bogus trial.